Hi everyone, and welcome back to Mental Health Myth Busting with That's Mental. Today is myth number 6, which is mental health is bad for your career. I absolutely love this myth, not because I agree with it, but because I think it's such a persistent one that still exists today, and I'm really excited to bust it together. It's responsible for a lot of stigma still around mental health in the workplace, and it's actually one of the main reasons I believe that people are not feeling ready or not willing to talk about mental health openly when it comes to professional situations. If you've ever experienced mental health issues while you were at work, or not even at work, but whilst you've been employed, then you know exactly what this myth is talking about, and it will probably resonate with you a lot. Many of us are afraid of talking about our mental health in professional situations, and so we hide it because we're afraid that it's going to harm us. And unfortunately, I have many stories that support this myth and the reason why we act like this and that we hide our mental health from others in the office. So, for example, 10 years ago, at the beginning of my career, I had a friend who was experiencing workplace harassment and was being bullied. And at that time, this person burned out. It was really bad. It reached a point where this person really just couldn't actually go to work anymore. And eventually, this person decided to quit their job because they just couldn't take it anymore. This person never really dared to file for unemployment because they were concerned that if they did, they would have to explain like why they had quit their job or why they'd left the company, and they didn't want to have to mention burnout at all. They were really worried that this would look bad for them and that it would tarnish their reputation and their career when they were at the beginning of their career. Years later, complete different situation, a colleague of mine was also blamed, as it were, for their own situation. So this person had also burnt out, and they were told that actually it was their own fault for working too hard, taking on too much work, and pushing themselves too much. And while I do believe that, we each have a responsibility towards ourselves, setting boundaries, etc., I also think that unfortunately it's quite common for employers to try to push responsibility onto us for burnouts. And, I know for a fact that for this person that wasn't true. And I also know that employers have a responsibility. So when people are being constantly overworked, and not being cared for, and they're not being given the right environment to work in, then of course it's much more natural that this type of toxic work environment is going to lead to burnout. But once again, this kind of reaction, it just goes to show why we're so afraid of talking about it. Because unfortunately, it has been, and it still will be, unfortunately, turned against us. Those are just a few reasons or stories that show you why this myth still exists and why people are so afraid. But it also goes beyond that. So for example, when I started this blog, I was actually really terrified. I was really concerned. I was afraid to put it out there. I was, for example, terrified that a colleague would get in touch with me to tell me that what I was saying was lies, that it wasn't true, that they'd ask me to take it down. I was really scared of that. I was also really worried that I'd end up on bad terms, that I'd get called into the director's office, kind of like at school where you get called to the principal's office, and they'd want to have a talk with me and tell me to stop doing it because it was looking bad on me and on the company. So I really had a lot of fears related to talking so openly about my mental health, and I think they were in part related to this myth because for many years we've been told that if you're burnt out or if you have experienced a burnout, then you're weak, that you shouldn't talk about it. It's really taboo, you shouldn't mention it because otherwise no one's going to want to employ you. They think that you don't have the strength to hold it together. So of course, we are concerned and we don't dare to talk about it. Yeah, I think another problem with this burnout, or at least traditionally, although it's changing, like in the past, people thought that burnout was a sign of weakness and that you can't cope with the pressure. So in addition to being, afraid that colleagues would get in touch with me and tell me to take down my content or tell me that I was lying, of course I was scared in general that it would be damaging to my career. Later, when I started sharing this content on LinkedIn, I was also really scared. I was quite nervous. Oh my God, what's it going to look like if I'm publicly talking about burnout and stress and all these experiences? And, based on what I just said, are people going to think that I'm weak? Are they not going to want to employ me anymore? Is this going to be negative for my career? What impact is it going to have? Am I being too much out in the open? I was really scared of the consequences, and I wasn't sure that I would be able to, not to cope, but I definitely had a concern, once again, all coming from this myth that mental health is bad for your career. So I think that these examples and the stories that I've shared, just really illustrate the core of this myth and why it exists. The fact is that we still believe today that if we talk about our mental health in a professional situation, it's going to be really damaging to our career. We believe that we're going to get fired, that we're going to lose responsibilities, that we're going to be perceived as crazy, that we can't handle it, that we're not strong enough. And so, of course, it's understandable that given the circumstances and these myths, many people just don't talk about it and hold it in. Once again, the media portrayal of mental health and mental health breakdowns at work also really isn't helping us here. Like I said earlier, burnout was a taboo topic. Luckily nowadays this is changing. It is a lot more openly spoken about. The World Health Organization has recognized it as a problem, and it's generally accepted as being a real thing and not just something that people are making up, which means that now that there's more people talking about it and it's more understood, it's easier to speak up. I'm just waiting for this dog to stop barking because, yeah. I'm proud to say from personal experience that talking about my mental health openly has not been damaging to my career at all. So although I had fears in the beginning, the great thing is that the more I did it, the more I overcame them, and the more I had time to realize that it was actually, not harming me at all. Nobody reached out to say bad things to me. Nobody ever got in touch with me, and to be honest, probably none of them even read what I was putting out there. So, it doesn't really matter. And even if they did, I always took a lot of care to keep situations and people as anonymous as possible. And my content is never about blaming or shaming. It's really about sharing a personal experience because I believe that that's more valuable to everyone else. Do I talk openly about my experience with employers or potential employers? Yes, definitely. Once again, this is something that I was a bit afraid of, I have to admit. I wasn't sure whether it would go down well. Same fear that I mentioned in the beginning. Are they going to want to employ me? But then I realized that by now, mental health and good mental health at work is so important to me, and I really have to find a place where, I'm not going to be in a bad situation again. So at this point in time, it's definitely something that's worth bringing up. It's kind of a deal breaker for me, and if I'm not, if it's not a match with the employer, then it's probably best for both of us to know that really early on. Additionally, being a mental health advocate is like a part-time job for me, so I'm actually really proud of the work that I'm doing. I'm learning a lot about, myself and about marketing and about my trade. So it's also something that I want to talk about in terms of work experience and I want to bring to the table. So that's another reason why I might bring it up in interviews and with potential employers. And I would even say that when you are able to talk about it in these situations, it's a sign of strength. And I think that the people across the table can really recognize that and appreciate that you're being open and having the courage to talk about something like this openly. And now I can say that I'm in the very fortunate position where being a mental health advocate and talking about it openly is actually an advantage for my career. This is a really amazing thing. I feel really grateful, of course, but definitely, it's a complete 360 on this myth and how I was feeling in the beginning. And on top of that, because I've spoken about it so openly, many people have actually come forward to me and talked to me about their personal experiences and have felt comfortable sharing their experiences with me. And that for me is really huge. It's, one of the main reasons that I do this. And I have to say that really outweighs all the negatives and all the things that I could have been afraid of and everything that there is around this myth, because just knowing that, you know, I've made one person feel comfortable opening up makes a huge difference and really gives me a lot of joy and a lot of confidence that I'm doing the right thing in speaking up about these issues. Once again, it just goes to show that, you know, talking about mental health openly, particularly in a professional situation, doesn't have to have a negative impact on you or on those around you. I really hope that my experience and that of other people in my network is enough to prove to you that no, you know, mental health or speaking about it is not going to destroy your career. It doesn't mean that you're going to get discarded or people are going to think less of you. We still have to work hard together to make sure that eventually it's not bad for anyone's career, that everybody can talk about it openly, and that on the contrary, people see this as a sign of strength, and that mental health is talked about openly in all workplaces. But there's still a way to go until we get there. Of course, I completely understand that every situation is different, and unfortunately it is the truth that in certain situations, in certain workplaces, and with certain people, you just cannot do it. So I really hope that one day we reach a point where this is socially acceptable for everyone, and this is going to be one day in the near future. So that's it. Thank you for tuning in. I hope you like this myth, and let me know if you have another one that you want me to bust.